Okay. And I'm just going to do the welcome again. So welcome again, everyone. Jessie just introduced herself before I started to remember recording. So let's go to you, Karen. Go ahead and give us an introduction and tell us how you got into the woo-woo.
I started out career-wise in nursing, and I was in the Air Force, and I became a pediatric nurse practitioner. So I've been working with kids for a long time, and then I got out of the military, and I'm a clinical psychologist, and I'm specifically child focused. Just in the course of over many years working with children, I realized that there was a subset of children, because I used to do a lot of learning disabilities testing. So I would have kids referred who were having a lot of difficulties. And in the course of working with families, realized that there were some kids having experiences that you could not explain by science or any of the DSM criteria. and I developed an interest in it. And plus, I have a daughter that I'm sure had a spiritual awakening when she was about 11 or so. And she became very depressed with that spiritual awakening. It was very frightening for her. And at the time, I didn't know what was really going on. In retrospect, I look back at that and go, oh, that's what was really going on. And I learning about, in classes of spiritual development and psychic development, and learning the different ways that these gifts can present. I don't know, this became an area of interest, because it seems like it's an area that in my field, nobody wants to talk about it. Everyone thinks if a child is seeing and hearing things that other people can't experience, that they are psychotic, and not necessarily true. They're all different kinds of gifts. And so anyway, this has been a great journey for me.
You're on mute.
I am on mute. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Karen. I appreciate it. So basically, the purpose of this time is to kind of answer questions, offer support, and then create community. So if you want, you can write down any questions you have, save them for the end. We'll be answering as many as time allows. So some of the things I wanted to start with are, what are some experiences a psychic kid may have? So, and I tell you what, I've got somebody's lawnmower going on over here. So if it gets to be too loud, you'll let me know. Okay, good. So what are some experiences that a psychic kid might have? So, for instance, seeing auras or sensing things, having stories from past lives, hearing different voices, feeling other people's emotions, picking up on the emotion of a place, having premonitions, whether that's through dreams or deja vu, and astral traveling, to name a few. So those are just a few things that a psychic kid might have. And Jessie, I'm going to start with you. Like, what are some straight up, other than like straight up believing, a parent believing, what's the most important thing that a parent can do to support their psychic child?
I think talking with them about experiences that, we've had ourselves as well. And, being open with your kids about things that you've experienced, because like, I know for myself, when I was, little, or, in my early 20s, I would have experiences, and then, maybe get brave enough to tell somebody. And even if somebody didn't tell me that, I was making it up, or I was crazy, or it was just a dream or something like that, I still had this piece that was just like, well, maybe they're just being nice, And so then I still didn't talk about it a lot, and I still would kind of push things away and be afraid. And so I think if somebody else would have shared actually, that's really what helped me, is when other people started sharing their experiences as well. And then I could go, oh, okay, so now I can ask questions and now we can discuss together and I'm not just making this up and they're not just being, nice about it. And, all kids are different.
Mhm.
So what resonates for one doesn't the other. I know my daughter now, she is pushing all of this away, and she definitely has a lot of experiences, and society and her very religious grandmother have tried to convince her that this is evil, that there's demons, and that's why she's seeing these things, and it's not true. She's getting better, but I started with her by giving her crystals, because crystals are pretty and they're very unassuming, and then just kind of slowly, teaching her about that. I gave her a deck of tarot cards. I didn't sit down to teach her any of it, not trying to shove anything down her throat, but she thought the cards were cool. And I was like, hey, here's a deck. This is what you can do. Here's a book, check it out. Let me know if you have any questions. So, I think, just being open and honest with, the experiences you've had is really helpful.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree. Karen, as a psychologist, what are some things that parents can do to kind of do their due diligence? And what are some things to look for to kind of maybe differentiate between, is my child having a psychic experience or are they having some kind of, mental or emotional anomaly?
And that's a hard one, because when someone's referred, to me, somebody's concerned about them. Parents are concerned about their child, or a pediatrician's concerned, and they want to refer to clarify what's going on. And as a clinician, I have to determine whether these experiences that the child's having, whether they are, there are a lot of things that can cause experiences, auditory hallucination, visual hallucination, olfactory hallucinations. There are a lot of things that could cause those things that we wouldn't want to miss, like brain tumors, a child who is in the early stages of being diagnosed bipolar could have unusual experiences during a manic or hypomanic phase. A child who's depressed can have depression with psychotic features. Children with anxiety disorders can have experiences like that. And most definitely children with PTSD, complex PTSD or single incident PTSD can have experiences like this too. So there's an array of different things that goes through my head when that child is presenting, and I'm trying to figure out, does this child need to be referred somewhere else? Do I need to work in concert with the pediatrician? And I like to figure out some of this stuff before we send to a psychiatrist, because the last thing I want is this child medicated if they don't really need to be.
Mm-hmm.
I want to, but a lot of things for me have to be ruled out before I can say, okay, this is actually psychic phenomena. That's what I think is going on. It is a lot of times, by the time I see a child who is having some of these experiences, they are already very anxious or very depressed, or sometimes, so there are layers of things, and each child is very, very different. And they can also have these things and have a learning disability. I mean, like you said, children are very complex. And for me, I always have a differential diagnosis in my head. Even if I've been seeing a child 2 years, I'm always entertaining the possibility that I might be wrong, and be open to experiences. And I think the hardest thing for kids is when they feel like they are all alone in this, and when they feel like they're not protected.
Mm-hmm.
And I think keeping the lines of communication open, so that this is not something you want your child to keep a secret. You want ongoing dialogue about what their experiences are. And and you need to be, open to watching when behavior is really taking a drastic change, and, are there other things going on? But I think keeping the lines of communication open, and also valid, like you said, Jesse, validating their experience. A lot of children get told, oh, you didn't really see that, that was probably a bad dream, or that was probably this. Children need to know that a parent is going to be there, that a parent is going to be open to exploring what this might be, even if a parent doesn't have the plan right away of how to deal with this, that the parent is going to join with that child, and they're going to figure it out, and they're going to seek out the people they need to figure this out, and they're not alone in it. They're not alone in it. And then in the process of working with someone who also has these gifts, they can also learn to manage feelings and thoughts about it and how to cope with it. But also that they can learn to have control.
Mhm.
Eventually, kids need to have a sense of control, that they're not, at the mercy of what's happening, that they can protect themselves, they can protect their space. And parents need to feel that too.
Yeah.
Because parents have to really act as an advocate for their child, to determine even sometimes who do we disclose to, when is it okay to use these gifts, how do you protect yourself, are there times where you need to put a bubble around you and you don't let all these feelings and things in, and I think that's an ongoing dialogue with people that you're working with,
Mhm.
whether it be, a therapist, whether that is oriented this way, in concert with someone who also has these gifts. I think parents need a team, effort.
Yeah, I agree. So let me ask you this, Karen, because a lot of times, we can have coexisting conditions, right? That's a medical term that's thrown around. Okay, is it possible, and I know it is, to have like the psychic thing and the anxiety or depression or whatever else? And how do you work around that? And then that may be a question also for another time to kind of get more deeper into it, but just you could give us an idea of what that might look like.
Well, once we start treatment, whether it be cognitive behavioral treatment or, once we start therapy and I start seeing symptoms of depression improve, and then these things are left, sometimes it is in the course of treatment and response to treatment that you kind of, it becomes clear, what might be really causing this.
Okay.
But I feel like some of these things present differently, and that's the thing where I think that, I know you and I talked about there needing to be research in this area.
Yeah.
When someone comes in and gives you a history of certain kind of experiences, they're different than the way that most kids kind of present with having visual or auditory hallucinations. There's different. It'd be nice to see someone do a study in that area, but I don't know who will do it.
I know, maybe yes.
Because there's no money in it. So drug companies aren't going to do it, but
yeah.
But there needs to be research in that area, because people in my field need to know how to go through, a differential diagnosis. These set of behaviors would suggest this, and I don't feel like we have that.
Right.
Because I said in a meeting, I work with a group of really, really good seasoned clinicians. And I ask, in our meeting, actually the guy who owns our practice is the president of the Virginia Psychological Association. And I asked Ed, I said, who else is doing this work? Who else is working, with psychic kids? And the look on their face, all their faces, I'm like, wow, that tells me not, not many people are, or if they are, it's sort of like on the down low and they're not advertising it, or
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So, yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Karen. I appreciate that. So there's a couple of other questions that we have. I'm just reading off my list here. How can kids or teens, this is a twofer kind of question. How can kids or teens, one, get over their fear of their abilities, and two, strengthen their abilities? And I want you guys to add to this, but I'm going to answer for the one. As far as getting over fears, I think facing it, acknowledging it, stating it, counseling also helps. Creating rituals is very, very helpful, like around bedtime when you go to bed. I actually just read about a study that was done for people who do rituals before they do anything that they think it's kind of difficult. That task gets like 10 times easier once they do this ritual. And so, like, for a child going to bed and who is afraid of the dark or afraid of whatever's in the closet, having a ritual around bedtime will then help them be able to face whatever it is that they're afraid of. So I think ritual is very important. And then using art to kind of, express what they're seeing and feeling and hearing and all of that. So, and then the second thing with the strengthening abilities, I think that psychic development, creating boundaries, and having a circle of trust of individuals that that child can speak with, because speaking to friends or teachers is not always beneficial or helpful or safe, So, anyway, Jesse, what can you add to that as far as kids getting over their fear and strengthening their abilities?
I think that a lot of the times, at least for my experience, I have kids that are older, like my oldest is going to be 29 this year. And then down to 12, and I have grandchildren. So life experience and just kind of seeing how maybe I could have done better. If you start noticing that your child has these abilities or gifts when they're young, I think that that's the best time to know that, and just encouraging them and teaching our children that they are powerful. Like we are so much more powerful than we have ever been led to believe. We are full of magic, and kids love magic. And so I really like to, use that word, because we can do anything. We can manifest anything. We are our biggest supporters. And so, just really letting them know, like, if there is something that's scary or they don't know what to do with, that they have sovereignty over their own space and they can make that bad thing go away, and it doesn't have to be a big dramatic thing where we're lighting fires and, doing all this stuff. I mean, I love that kind of a thing, but, in the moment, if it's 2:00 in the morning and you wake up and there is a being in your room and you don't know what it is, whether it's good or bad, or scary, your children, like, we have the ability to say, I'm not doing this. This is my space. This is my safe space. And you are not allowed here, and it's just that simple, and they will go away. They will go away. And so I think that that's really important, and then as we get into, dealing with teens, that can be a little more challenging if this is the first time we're having that conversation with them, because, they're a little sassy. They don't always want to listen, and it can be extra scary. I think a lot of teens in different ways do, struggle with depression or anxiety at some point, just because growing up is tough. Being different being different than the normal, whatever, makes it even harder. So, yeah, I guess with teens, I'm still trying to, I'm still figuring out exactly how to deal with all of that. But I do know, like, for my daughter, and she can be a tough nut to crack. What has helped her the most is actually my own development and her seeing me open, like when I'm taking classes or reading with people, having conversations, it's never a secret. It is never a secret. My husband, my kids, like anybody can sit and listen with me, I meditate and I tell them about that. I talk about my experiences, in meditation, or, when I talk to the Native American guy that hangs out in this area, that is no longer in the flesh, just things like that. And then sometimes even the scarier stuff, I tell them the stories of that. And, I think I told you, I woke up, I was getting ready to go to bed one night, and there was this red light, and I could feel this dark energy, and it wasn't super happy. And it was like looking at me, and it was trying to scare me. And I was like, I am too tired for this right now. What do you need?
Yeah.
And then it got curious and was like, whoa, you're not scared of me? And I was like, I'm not scared. If you need a hug, so I'm going to send you some love, but I'm really tired. And, so here's a hug, here's some love. I'm going to go to bed now. And he left,
Yeah.
And so, just, I tell those stories too, because to most people, you're laying in bed at night and it's dark and there's a red light and you feel this, heavy, dark energy. It's just going to freak you out.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think just really being open, and with teens, being patient, and, subtly reminding them that they're amazing and all powerful.
They really are.
Yeah.
They really are. I'm going to bring, thank you for sharing, Jesse. I want to bring Amanda in on the call. She's not going to turn her camera on. She's not feeling great today, but Amanda, if you could just kind of give a brief introduction of yourself, and maybe if you wanted to add to that, because I know you also have a teenager who is,
yes.
who's a little
Hi.
psychic.
So I for most of my life, I was in the military, so I was more science kind of based. And after I retired from the military, I started reconnecting with a lot of the phenomenon that I had been drawn to because of the experiences I had when I was young. A lot of the similar experiences that C had mentioned on her podcast. And same thing, was not believed when I was young. So once I got out of the military and I started developing my gifts, I became a professional psychic. And I have a daughter, and she is very psychic. And the problem is that as we grow, we get certain frames of reference. And for instance, as a parent, you might have your child say, oh, I have a tummy ache. And because of your frame of reference, that maybe they need to go to the bathroom, or maybe they have anxiety, or maybe whatever. But they don't have the words or the frame to describe exactly what's going on. And so as a parent, sometimes you have to take a step back, because you're so used to knowing, like, I don't know, the overall picture, but you have to kind of bring your mindset back to a child and say, okay, what's really going on?
Mm-hmm.
Because, like, for instance, my daughter was, she was terrified. She was seeing all of these different things. I wasn't seeing them, even though I was very psychic, because she was psychic in a different way than I am. And so she would see dead people or beings, just like somebody was in the room, like I was in the room with her, but I couldn't see those same beings. And when she would describe being scared, I didn't look into it the same way, because I was trying to diagnose, something else, I guess. And so when I kind of took a step back and was like, oh, this is really what's happening, then I was able to lead her to some things to find out what feels right to her. So just like you might tell your child, like, oh, your tummy hurts, maybe you need to go to the bathroom. And then when their tummy ache is relieved by going to the bathroom, then they can be like, oh, that's what that was. So it's like a self-discovery, because being a kid is hard on its own, but being a psychic kid is incredibly difficult, because you have all of those same troubles, but there's not a book to diagnose these things, or a test. So you have to be like, okay, well, is it this or is it this? So when I helped my daughter find some certain, ways to deal with this, that's when her, a lot of her anxiety over it really went away, because she did start to have control. But just going in as a parent and saying, oh, you're scared, it's this, that doesn't seem to work, even for the most psychic of parents, I think. So you have to bring yourself down and really try to understand, what are they trying to describe when they don't have the words to describe things.
That's good.
I don't know if that was coherent, but
yeah, no, that makes sense. Karen, I feel like you've got something to add to that too.
Yeah, with the I think a part of this, when you talk about the fears, I think what is really helpful as well is some training in psychic development, learning to meet their spiritual support team. So, and that's another thing, that they're not alone. I think that that's really important, because then they can learn about their gifts if they want to learn, how their gifts are different from other people, how they can enhance their gifts and grow their gifts. And also too, that if they don't want to use those gifts, they don't have to in life, that they've been given this gift. And I think the way that it's framed also can help deal with the anxiety and things, that, because sometimes for a kid, it's overwhelming. They think, oh my gosh, I got to help all these people, but when they go, nah, right now you can be a kid, and then we can talk about it down the road when you're in your teens, what you want to do, or, I think it's important for, as parents, that we don't share our fears with our kids and make them more fearful, about what they're experiencing. But I think learning about their gifts and interacting with other kids and other people who have these gifts helps make it not so scary,
Yeah. I think you're right. I think having that community, and again, sharing, hey, it's okay what you're feeling, and just having that open dialogue, it's so important. So let me ask you guys too, and I'll try to answer this as well. I had parents type in or ask certain questions. So one of the questions was, this parent has these these fears that her daughter's spiritual gifts are making her detach from her true self. So she's so frightened of them, she's just kind of like going into herself, probably experiencing some depression, that kind of thing. So I'm going to go with Amanda. When you worked with your daughter, what were some things that you did to help her understand her abilities and begin to accept them rather than turn away or be fearful of them?
Ooh, I almost turned my camera on there. Well, understanding that it was a psychic phenomenon was the first step for me, because, getting to that point where you share that with your child can be difficult for a parent, because you're so used to being completely in control, and you don't ever want to be like, I don't know, you want to be the head of whatever's going on. And to come out as psychic yourself is a very vulnerable thing for many people, because it opens yourself up to so much criticism.
Mm-hmm.
And to go and help your child, like, okay, maybe this is the issue, but you're going to do whatever you can to help your child. So when I started trying to work with her, and I had some input from other psychics, of course, and it seems like, like as a parent, it doesn't matter how good you are at something. Sometimes you need an outside source to weigh in for your child to listen. It's like, you could be an Olympic swimmer, but your child is not going to learn to swim from you. So I had to have other psychics kind of, give that frame of reference to my child. And then once they accepted that, like, okay, there is things, because my daughter was, we did not have a religious upbringing. And my daughter was on the verge of atheism, like very, very close. So for her to see things that were beyond the veil, so to speak, it didn't go quite with her, spiritual mentality, I guess. So she was very conflicted and thinking that she was crazy. So when I start to bring these truths up, or just kind of make normal conversation about it and make it feel like it's an acceptable truth, then it was like, okay, well, let's go one step further. Do you want to watch the TV show about the psychic kids and some of the things that the other kids were experiencing? She's like, oh yeah, I've seen that too. And then seeing the children take action and then take control and have some kind of positive outcome made her feel like, well, sure, if mom can do it, she's mom. Like, I don't have mom powers, but these kids can do it, so I can do it. And I think that was big difference. And then as I did a couple of classes with my daughter, and my daughter was paired up with another teen. And so it wasn't that pressure of, a parent or an adult. It was like, hey, let's do this exercise. And instead of seeing scary things, she brought in angels, and she saw angels in her room, and I could hear her from the other room. She was laughing, joking, and she's like, oh, and they're dancing around. And so suddenly it went from everything unknown is scary to, oh, there's unknown stuff that's outside of like real life that is actually good. And that made a huge difference, because then the shadows that she would say weren't always scary. Maybe they're just dead people that need help. And so it really kind of lifted this blanket of anything outside my perception is totally something I don't want, because I'm so scared of it, because I don't know what it is, and lumped it all in together to, oh, I can have positive experiences. There are neutral people. And now let me see how I can take control of that. And she took control of it by, interviewing them. I taught her to cross them over, and she felt like she was helping. And then she had the angels come in and help her too. So those were huge, huge things. But now, of course, she's in that teenage area where if I mention anything in front of her, try to have a conversation, she just shuts everything completely down. But I think that's just a normal teen thing. But it's there if she ever has a question.
Awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you. You mentioned, as far as like differentiating between like not being scared of the unknown, right? And differentiating, but let's kind of go into a little bit of the unknown that is dark, because I know you mentioned like that Psychic Kids show, and some of it is very dark energy that they deal with. And I'm not exactly a fan of how they deal with it. And so I think that, yes, we have spirits, earthbounds, that are not crossed over, and they can cause a lot of havoc, and they can actually come in and feel very dense and heavy and dark. But then there's also that other negative energy that can come in that feels evil. And so let's kind of get into that a little bit, because I know like one parent wrote in saying that she was scared that her child was possessed by demons. And she kept having these recurring dreams where her child's were being possessed by demons. And so how do we then kind of differentiate? And I guess I'll kind of start with the things that I do. And that's, again, telling that child or teen, hey, you have power. You can take control of this situation. And saying to that thing or entity or whatever, you are not welcome here, and you cannot stay. And then also calling in Archangel Michael or Jesus or Mary or Buddha or whoever to come in and to create a safe space with white light, with the white light of love, if I can talk. Create that safe space. And that's all it takes. That is literally all it takes. I know, Amanda, I talked to your daughter not too long ago, and she mentioned, and I think I said this on the podcast, she was like, if it's a very small child, you can tell that child to imagine their favorite superhero, and that superhero creates a fortress of safety around them. And in the same way, we can call on our spiritual support team, our superheroes, right, to come in and create that kind of safety around us, to push out anything negative or evil or what have you, things that make us feel uncomfortable. Even earthbound spirits. There are earthbound spirits who I've met who do not want to cross over, and they're all about creating havoc. And thank you, no thank you, you can leave. and have a nice, time. So, did anybody else want to add to that as far as like what their child has experienced with maybe anything dark? Because I feel like that is something that we should discuss. Jessie, go ahead.
Yeah. So my daughter last year was really, really rough. She was diagnosed with complex PTSD. There was a lot of depression. There had been some things that happened that I had not been aware of, and everything just kind of came to the surface last year. So that mixed in conjunction with a friend that she had that was not healthy, for her. She was seeing a lot of things. And I do think that part of it was probably sleep deprivation. And so some of it was, hallucinations, though I definitely felt things in the house. I was doing a lot of clearing, and I think that her emotional state was attracting these darker, more negative energies, and feeding off of that. And then she was feeding off of them, and it just became, it was just really heavy, and it was a lot. So I love the idea of, calling someone in, whether it be a superhero or, a religious figure. I was raised religious, I have not raised my children that way, and very much try to help them see how powerful they are, that we are all part of, the same source. So what I did when I was younger, and still do on a regular basis, now I call the angels in, more than I probably ever have in my whole life. But I would call in my ancestors. So like my grandmother passed away. My best friend's mom, who was like a second mom to me, she had passed away. And when times were really rough and I was scared, I would call them in, as protection and that white light. And I think that that's really important. Breathing also. We forget to breathe. We all forget to breathe. I don't care if you're 3 years old or 300 years old. We often forget to breathe. And so, when kids are having that moment, just reminding them, just pause, take a deep breath, hold it, and then sometimes they don't want to close their eyes. Like my daughter has a really hard time feeling comfortable enough to close her eyes, which I don't understand all the time. So I'm like, if something was scary to me, I was like, close my eyes, blankets over my head. But she has a hard time doing that. She feels more vulnerable if her eyes are closed and she can't see what's, going on and tracking the thing that's in her room.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that calling in the light and calling in whoever, if the thing that you think is the most powerful thing in the entire universe is the tree out in front of, your house, then that tree is going to be more powerful to you than somebody telling you about Archangel Michael, and you've never, learned about angels and you don't know. And while the angels are, extremely amazing and powerful and helpful to somebody that isn't in the space to want to accept that right now, then Yeah, a superhero, a tree, your favorite toy truck, you know, like whatever, you know, my grandson, he has a stuffed rhinoceros and that is his thing. And so you know, I did Reiki on him. I did Reiki on his rhino and I let him know that anytime he's scared, you know, that Gigi put magic in his rhino, and his rhino is always going to, you know, be able to protect him. So, you know, I think we have to get creative, right? And use our imaginations to help the kids. And I guess.
And I think you bring up a good point about intention, and our intention is what creates our reality, right? Our thoughts create reality. So when we intend something, especially at a vibration of love and above, then it manifests a lot more quickly. So let's talk about a little bit about. Oh yeah, Karen, go ahead.
Also, you know, when you said calling in, you know, whatever help, you know, when my house had a lot of paranormal activity, I at that time didn't know that I actually would be able to clear that myself, because I hadn't been in psychic development classes. But I called in a Native American shaman to clear the house. It worked. But I mean, it was like, you know, I mean, we had to stop some of these things from happening in the house, you know, and
yeah, it gets disruptive. But yeah, it's intention, and it's taking your own power and realizing that we are all very, very powerful. So a couple of things about just boundaries and protection. You know, let's talk about some objective things that parents and kids can do to help them clear, because we've talked about clearing the space. So, okay, how do we do that? How do we protect our energy? Especially if, you know, those of us who are psychic are like 10 times more empathic than, you know, the normal person walking down the street, right? So, how do we protect our energy? One of the things, again, that I really like to do is, Jesse, you brought up the tree, and I love that. I will go outside and put my hands on a tree. I will put my bare feet on the ground and just imagine. And again, and I tell people to imagine with the screen of their imagination. If they can close their eyes and think of a pink dog with purple polka dots, they're seeing it right here. That's the screen of their imagination. So if they can imagine roots from their feet going all the way into the ground, that's one way to ground. And I encourage kids when they're getting home from school to do that. Just take a minute, take off their shoes, put their feet on the bare floor or on the ground, and just take a couple of breaths. So the breathing is one of those really good ways that they can ground. And then as far as protecting their energy, and I know I shared this on the podcast, but I'll even recommend that kids imagine themselves, especially younger kids, putting on a spacesuit before they leave the house for school or wherever, and zipping it up. And they zip it up before they walk out the door, and that just kind of creates an element of protection, so they're not absorbing all of the emotions and all of the things. So what are some things that you guys can recommend that you've tried? Amanda, or Karen, or anyone? Felicia, Laura. Yeah, Karen.
I have found determining who to disclose to be an important thing, especially once you hit middle school.
Yeah.
You know, because sometimes kids can be very excited about the, hey, you know, I have these abilities. However, especially if you're a teenage girl, sharing that with someone who is your friend, who maybe 2 weeks from now might not be your friend, could be a problem.
Yeah.
You know, and could create a whole lot of bullying. And so I think one of the things that I have learned the hard way is to be very cautious about, you know, having a conversation with kids about who needs to really know about this. You know, not that it needs to be the special secret, but not everybody has earned the right to know about this special thing about, you know, a person. And sometimes it's very protective to know who to share that information with and who not.
Yeah. Yeah, and that goes back to like this circle of trust. Who are the people that you can talk about this with, and where does it need to stay? So that's definitely that's a good point.
Because middle school girls are the worst.
They are. They are.
They are.
Horrible
Agreed.
things.
Yeah.
I do like when you said, keeping things a secret. For me, and I talk with my daughter about this too, is that, yeah, I don't tell everybody, that, I can talk to dead people, and I have, had communications with, beings that aren't of this world. I don't go around advertising it. If the subject comes up, I'm probably going to have a lot to say, but one of the things that, I've talked with my daughter about too, is that I kind of like having that little secret, like you sit back, feel into what's going on, maybe you're not taking in the energy, but you can kind of see, and it's your own little secret that all of a sudden why these two girls are getting at each other when everybody else can't make sense of it. And there's all this drama going on, but you're able to kind of tap in and, and you see that bigger picture, and that's your own thing. And so, just sit back and watch it like you're watching a show, and it's your own little secret. And then, you can come home and, talk to your parents, your grandparents, or, trusted, somebody else about, these things that are going on. So I kind of, I like that. I like the spacesuit thing. As an adult, I don't do that, but, I'm not opposed to it either. I know adults that totally love the idea of zipping themselves up in a spacesuit, I had been told to, when I'm in the shower, and I'm washing everything away that no longer serves me, that's not mine. And I was like, that's cool. And then when you get out of the shower, put on a cape. I'm also not a cape person, right now. Maybe I will be in a week. I don't know. But, I think that there's all sorts of ways, like what does each child resonate with? And so for me, what I do when I'm standing in the shower, I imagine, it's easy to imagine because it's the water that's coming from Gaia. She is covering me in her life source, and that's protecting me,
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it can be, something pixie dust. I love glitter. Some people don't, but everything could be glittered, and I'd be okay with that, Yeah.
I love that. I absolutely love that. I think too, you're right. Like, as far as going back to the secret thing, it's really a superpower, what we're able to do, right? I mean, we're able to see dead people. We're able to talk to angels. We're able to, see all these cool or hear all these cool things or feel things or know things before they happen, right? Premonitions, that kind of thing. So it's really kind of a superpower. And I think when talking to kids, compare it maybe to Superman.
Yeah.
And Clark can't go around and tell everybody that he was Superman. No, it was a secret. It was his own secret. It was his way of kind of, helping the world. So yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. That's fun. All right, guys. Well, just a couple of other questions we've got here. I have a parent who asked a question about mediumship and whether spirits should be spoken to or left alone. So I have a couple of thoughts on this. One of my things is, unless the spirit is being disruptive or like waking your child up or waking you up in the middle of the night, if you see them on the side of the road or something, don't speak to them. They're on their own journey, you're on yours. It would be like, you can be like going up to a stranger and saying, hi, I'm C, how are you? But if the spirit is entering your space and is then causing these emotions like fear or disrupting, sleep, things like that, then definitely, entertain them and say, hey, look, you need to leave. This isn't cool. This is kind of my space, not yours. You can go along now. But when dealing with spirits, there's two types of spirits, and I just wanted to kind of quickly do that. There's earthbound spirits and light beings. Earthbound spirits are spirits who have experienced some kind of trauma, or they feel guilt or fear, or they don't want to leave, whoever when they pass. So they don't go into the light right away. And they kind of get stuck here. They might get stuck in a loop, or they might get stuck feeling emotions that are not really bright. And so they get kind of, in that way, they can bring the energy and the density, that feeling down, and it can feel really heavy. It's not negative. It's not bad. It's not evil. It just is what it is. It's like when we interact with other people, or ourselves, we're not all having good days all the time, right? So it's the same thing. Earthbounds are here, and they're not in the light. Light beings are spirits who have crossed over into the light, who've gone to the other side, and then who come back to visit us. And a lot of times children will report, visiting with deceased grandparents or other family members, and they're having conversations and tell mommy I love her, and that, that kind of thing. It's a very positive experience. So I think the general rule of thumb is not to speak to a spirit unless spoken to, or unless that spirit has entered your space, at which point you can then say, hey, it's time for you to cross over or go into the light, and or you need to leave. And then, or do what Amanda's daughter did and sit there and interview a spirit, get information about them. The first time I met a spirit who actually came up and talked to me and was like, hey, I need some help. I was like, all right, tell me your name, tell me your age, tell me how you died, tell me, all the things. And then I went and Googled him, and he was right there. So that could be, an experiment to do as well. So yeah, that's kind of where I go. As far as crossing spirits over, I always ask in Archangel Michael or Jesus or Mary, again, whoever you feel comfortable asking in to bring in the light, and then allowing that to take the spirit over into the light to cross over. So does anybody have anything to add to that?
I do.
Yeah, go.
So I think one of the things that gets a little overlooked is really discussing emotions with children. And I know that can be a really big topic. Preferably if we can start this at a younger age, it's better. But I just know that I never did that. And so it hasn't been until recently, like the last year, that I've realized that I've had all this anxiety and all these things. And so really discovering, like, why do I feel fearful? Why am I putting the word fear on this, or anger or whatever? A lot of times we, can kind of overcomplicate things, and it gets jumbled. And for kids, it can be really hard to discern exactly what it is that they're feeling. And so if a being, whether it's a light being or somebody that, just hasn't transitioned, that is, stuck here, if they're in the room, they may not mean any harm, they're just there. And this child is feeling fearful, rightfully so. If a stranger was in my room, it's a normal thing to feel. So, maybe trying to have conversations with kids on, okay, so why does this make you feel fearful? There's a thing that I do with, my kids and my friends and myself, and I ask 5 whys. If I'm trying to get to the bottom of something, it's like, okay, why do I feel this way, or whatever, because this, okay, why that, okay, and so on and so on. And usually by the time you get to the 5th one, you've kind of narrowed it down, and we can take the fear and the anxiety out of the thing. And I think that that's really helpful because, not everybody hears. And so if one of your psychic abilities is not actually auditory, and you have a being that's in the room, now you clearly, you have this feeling and this knowing that someone is there, being able to feel your way through removing that entity, I think is really important. And so going back to the light the light for me has been very helpful. And I think it's just such an easy thing to do. And, just always calling on that light. So if you're ever feeling uncomfortable and you can't discern exactly what's going on in that moment, bypass everything else and just fill the room with light. We don't need to talk about anxiety and fear and all of these things. We can just fill the room with light. And so anything that is not love and above for our highest and that's good, just fill it with light. Just zap everything with light. I just feel like you can't go wrong if you zap everything with white light and love,
Yeah,
so.
that's the truth. That's the truth. Thank you. That's great. Yeah, Karen.
And I think that's really important, Jesse, because sometimes it's very difficult to determine whether it is the spirit's emotion that they're picking up and feeling, or theirs. So sometimes it can be very, very confusing. So to have some ways to handle when you can't get to the bottom of the whys and what you're feeling, that it might be somebody else's feelings.
Yeah, being empathic is something that can be really challenging to figure out how to live with and work through as adults. Especially adults and that are just figuring out, oh, this is why I've been so sad my whole life, or whatever, anxious, is because you're empathic and you're taking on everybody else's things. For a child, that's a heavy lift to work your way through. But I don't think it's impossible. And I love that, doing things like this, having meetings like this and bringing more people together, it's just another step in the right direction of raising the next generation of children that are going to be able, this is going to be much more normalized and so on and so on. And it's great.
That's definitely the goal, is to normalize this. And because here's the thing, everyone is psychic, whether they know it or not, whether they can tap into that or not. Everyone is psychic in some way or another. So yeah, thank you guys. So, okay. So is there anyone else who has any other questions or thoughts that you'd like to share? I know we had some other questions from people that were a little bit more specific, and we can get into that in a minute. But does anybody have any other thoughts or questions? Yeah, Felicia.
I just want to say this is great. All this information is very encouraging. And then just seeing you guys, because I've been solo bolo for a really long time. I've been when I craved a click or craved socialization, I got the information that it wasn't the right season, everything in due time. And it's good to see other people's experience, not only hear about it or know that it's foreign or read about it, because I'm very big on knowledge. Knowledge is power. So I do a lot of self-seeking, and I'm steered in many directions, but this is a great thing. I just want to say that.
Thank you. Well, these are, it's really cool the way Spirit has brought all of us together, for sure. Yeah, that's awesome. All right, well, let me just get to, I've got one more question that I wanted to ask you guys, and this was really funny. I thought it was funny and really cute. This one parent emailed and said that her son turns into animals at night and states that he has panther cameras in his body, which I just love. I love this so much. So when your child comes to you and says this bizarre thing, right? What are some things that, because children obviously have a limited understanding of the world, and obviously we have a limited understanding of spirit and all of this. So I'm going to open the floor up to you guys and ask, what are some things that maybe you could respond and say, well, this is what it could possibly be. I have my own opinion, but I'll share that at the end.
I have opinions too, but first off, I think that is so cool. You know, what a fun experience. And again, you know, like not discounting and telling the child like, wow, that is really cool. Like, how does that make you feel? Tell me about this. Like, you know, what do you see? My immediate impression is that he has a really strong connection to you know, his spirit animals. And I would venture to say that his spirit animal is, you know, some sort of large cat, in which you're going, you know, saying children have, you know, limited knowledge about things. And I would, you know, maybe reword that just a little bit. Their vocabulary is a little smaller. And so trying to explain what it is that they're seeing or feeling, these panther cameras, you know, I think is what he'd said, right? Like he's got panther cameras. That's so cool. To me, it feels like he is seeing through the eyes of these animals or this animal. Maybe there's several, you know, and so he's seeing things in different ways. So yeah, that's I would just encourage that. I would continue to encourage him telling you all about, you know, that all of that's going on.
Yeah, I agree. What else? Anybody?
Well, it sounds like can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. It sounds like he's very much into his shamanic energy.
Yes.
You know?
Yes. Yeah, for sure. One of the things that a lot of kids do, and I did, and I still do, is astral travel, right? Where in our dreams, I think everyone leaves their body. If you've ever had a dream of flying or floating or anything like that, that's your spirit leaving your body. And so I think that this young person was actually a panther in a past life, and maybe goes back to visit his family, and maybe goes back to visit to go visit, and is then able to see through the eyes of his family members when they're doing whatever it is they do. So I mean, it could be a number of things. Who knows? That's the cool thing about this is, you know, we just get to experiment and ask questions and get answers that are not all the time very believable. So, and that's okay.
Right. And nobody can prove you.
And nobody can say anything different. Yeah.
You know, it is what it is. But I think it's super cool. I always wonder what the world would be like right now if none of us were ever told as children that what we were seeing and experiencing was just our imagination, you know? And that's the thing, like we're told, oh, it's just your imagination, which belittles your imagination, you know? And I think that holds us down so much. We imagine all sorts of things. We imagine winning the lottery. We imagine being veterinarians and astronauts, you know? And so when you imagine that and then you're just told, well, it's just your imagination, then, you know, that kind of crushes your dreams. And that's not cool. So we got to change some things.
Agreed. Yeah, 100% agree. Yeah, because our imaginations, that's how we create. That's how we manifest. That's how we make things happen. Yeah. So
somebody imagine sliced bread, and I love the ease of making a sandwich.
Exactly. 100%. So, all right, guys. Well, thank you all so much for your time. And if there's anything else, we can talk about that now. I'll give you guys a second to come up with any questions if you wanted to, or closing remarks. Anybody?
I don't have any.
Okay. All right. Well, then I will say goodbye. Thank y'all so much. We're going to, the way I want to move forward in this, just FYI for those of you who don't know, I really want to create a community for kids and parents. Right now that's over on Facebook under the Psychic Ability for Kids and Teens. and I'm working on developing a program if I get enough interest in it for kids, like, I don't know, I haven't decided an age yet, but for middle school and up, kids who are psychic or who have kind of the psychic or intuitive kind of abilities, and we'll do some kind of development program so that they can learn to tap in and protect their auras, and talk to or interview a ghost or cross a ghost over, that kind of thing. So I'm really excited that we can bring that to fruition and get that on board really soon. So, and even learning about Reiki, about energy healing and that kind of thing, helping our kids understand that, again, they have so much power and are just incredible little light beings. So
there is something to that I want to add, because I know that with kids it can be really hard, especially with the teenagers, getting them to believe, in themselves or, anything that we're talking about. So this spring, we added a new dog to the house, and it was not going well. The two dogs it was not going well. And I was at my wit's end. And then I was like, wait a minute, I'm psychic and I can do things, so, but I really wanted the girls to be involved, and so I had them sit with me and the dogs, and I was like, so we're going to send energy, and we're going to, communicate through our minds to the dogs, and we're going to send energy. And they thought that I was insane. But one of the things I explained to them that helped them to get this, I said, well, have you ever just felt somebody looking at you, like you just know that somebody's staring at you, and you turn around and yes, there's somebody staring at you from across the cafeteria or the park or whatever. And I said, yeah. And I was like, that's because you're feeling their energy. They're projecting their thoughts, their energy at you, and you can feel it. So it's, and I think that everybody has experienced that. Mm-hmm. So, so I love that. I definitely, want to get the girls involved more in Reiki and to meet other kids.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's, have a community so that they don't feel so alone. Like they're not the only ones, and mom or dad is not the only one I can talk about this with. So.
Right. And they're not the only ones that have parents that are crazy and think that they're psychic.
Right. There you go. Exactly. That too. So I want to know, Jessie, what happened with the dogs?
They're great.
Oh, they are. Okay.
They're great. So the new dog, Mia, she's a purebred Akita. She's seriously the biggest dog we've ever had. And she's still a puppy, so now she, is naughty a little bit. And my other dog is older and doesn't want to put up with the shenanigans. So there are some moments where I'm like, oh, but it's not out of malice anymore. Like they hated each other. It was not going well. And now they're great. They hang out in the yard. They share a dog bed. Yeah.
And was that after you had a conversation with them? Okay.
Yes. After I had a conversation with them, they both, and my older dog, she wasn't necessarily the aggressor. She was just kind of, grumpy and not helping the situation. And I told her, I said, listen, our other dog is Mia. I said, Mia is going to be living with us. And I know that she can be annoying, but this is going to happen. And, she's trying to get along with you. You also have to put forth an effort, and she did. She looked at me and she, I could just I just knew. And so literally from that day forward, it was better.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah. That happens. That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, thank you guys again so very much for your time and for being here. And keep a lookout just on the website and on the Facebook page for that development class for kids 15 and up. I am offering psychic development next month, and so kids 15 and up are welcome to join. It's Mondays and Wednesday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern time. So, so yeah, hopefully that won't eat into a school night too much. But for anybody who's interested, who wants to do the psychic development, that's available too. So
Awesome.
anyway, all right, guys. Well, thank y'all so much. Y'all all have a wonderful, wonderful Saturday.
Bye, guys.
Your daughter has a great birthday, Felicia.
Yes. Oh, happy birthday to her.
Enjoy.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank y'all.